Hello, everybody. Sorry for the slightly delayed start, but welcome to iGaming Next Weekly News Live. My name is Jake. I'm the managing editor, and joining me today is my colleague Connor. Connor, how are you doing?
Hello, mate. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a health kick this week, actually.
All right. What brought that on?
Starting to look after myself. Yesterday, I did, I think 9 sit-ups, and I went for a walk, and I ate an apple. So today, I'm going to reward myself with some cocktails this afternoon. So that's pretty good. What else has been happening?
Somewhere, I suppose.
Got a new fragrance delivered today as well from Parfums de Marly, a French perfumer. It's very nice, I must say. It's called Godolphin, and it smells like leather and raspberries, which is quite unusual. So I'm having a lovely day. Yeah, how are you, mate?
Good. I'm good. We'll have to take your word for it. They've not invented smell-o-vision yet, but
no,
but maybe at some point in the future.
Yeah,
anyway, so sadly, the so-called dynamic duo, as they're calling themselves now, I think Pierre and Nico, can't be with us this week as they're traveling. Pierre spent some time back in Sweden, and Nico's always traveling somewhere. So you'll have to make do with me and Connor. Connor, we don't have a special name like the dynamic duo. Maybe we'll leave it up to the audience to give us one. Oh, that's a risky business, but
the disastrous duo.
Yeah, not quite as catchy, but there
Dumb
we are.
and Dumber.
Right, we've got so much to talk about this week. There have been a flurry of Q2 financial results, but don't worry, we're not going to spend an hour boring you with those numbers. There's been some more exciting news than that. First of which comes from Smarkets, which is a UK, a London-based operator that runs an exchange and a sportsbook business via its SBK brand. And we've actually got a special guest for you this week as well in their chief executive, Jason Trost, who will be joining us shortly if there aren't any technical difficulties. But Smarkets made the news this week with a brand new advert that was I think originally designed for television, but it didn't clear the advertising code because it was so controversial. The press release said it would bring advertising into disrepute because they basically took aim at quite a lot of their competitors in the UK sector. But Connor, you wrote this story. You enjoy this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw there's a very popular gambling industry commentator on Twitter who said about it. I think he said he didn't know if he loved it or hated it, which is probably the desired effect, I suppose. At least it's got people talking. And it was no surprise to read that the one of the agencies who worked on this advert, I can't remember the name of the agency, but it's a former marketing guy from Paddy Power. So you can see a little bit of that mischievous kind of point of view.
Yeah, that's right. I think he used to be the head of mischief, didn't he, by job title? So
that was it.
Certainly come through in this campaign. But I mean, should we get Jason on to talk about it?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Get me on.
Jason, how you doing?
Here he is.
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for
Keep
joining
up with
us.
the health kick, Connor. It's really important.
Yeah, man. I'll do another 9 sit-ups today, and then a couple of pina coladas. I'll be right as right.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, listen, Jason, thank you very much for joining us. Before we jump into the ad, I understand you've taken over as the host of another quite popular gambling podcast. So maybe you want to give that a bit of a quick plug for our viewers.
Yeah, I took it over from Jake Williams. It's called Business of Betting. Jake has been amazing. I mean, he's been doing it for 3-4 years, and I think he just wanted to move on to other things, and it kind of went dormant. And I saw him at a conference, and I said, "What happened?" He said, I've done my bit," and I offered to take it over, and the rest is history. So I took it over, I want to say like 2 months ago. I'm trying to aim for a weekly podcast to just talk about the business of betting, the clues in the title. So I'm trying to just talk, like, I'm not trying to talk about tips and sports and like who to bet on. I want to talk more like how the business works and economics of the industry, the theories of the industry, the M&A in the industry, and really focus on the more the business side of the business.
Yeah, it's good. It's quite a high level look at the inner workings of the industry, which I'm sure a lot of our audience will appreciate. And you can check that out on the Business of Betting YouTube channel, I think. But Jason, yeah, you're obviously here to talk about this new advert, which, well, it didn't quite hit our screens this week. But yeah, let's start by, do you want to just give us a bit of background on where this concept came from originally?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been doing Smarkets for 15 years, and we've always been kind of like a below the radar company. We're quite unique to the industry. We've built our own tech in-house. We're one of the only operators globally that has built their own tech in-house. It's quite unique, and it's taken a while because sports betting tech is quite complicated and nuanced. Because of that, we've always kind of like kept to ourselves, stayed below the radar, didn't really shout from the rooftops. But this advert is really our first attempt to really start shouting from the rooftop about the amazing stuff that we've built, the different take that we have on the industry. And I think from my perspective, we've been successful so far at making a splash, trying to announce to the industry that we want to do things differently.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously a big part of that difference, by the way, just for our viewers, they can again see the advert on the SBK YouTube channel or in the news story we published on iGaming Next this week. But I mean, the premise, obviously, it talks about bringing advertising into disrepute. I'm just wondering, and obviously you said that this didn't get through Clearcast, which are like the kind of barometer for television adverts in the UK. What was the intention to make this advert for TV, or did you realize that it was kind of probably never going to clear that specification, so you could be a bit more creative and risque with it?
No, 100%. We made this for TV. I mean, that was the intent, was to always put it on TV. And Clearcast is awful. The standards are awful. Like, just to give you a sense on like what a nanny state it is, you're not allowed to disparage your competition, even if it's truthful. So like they took umbrage with the fact that we had a professional footballer in there, just generically saying we don't hire professional footballers to flock our sports book was considered disparaging to Paddy Power, which to me is insane. It's not like I was on the telly saying Paddy Power is shit and green is a stupid color and they suck. It was more like, we don't use lame footballers. And that wouldn't go past the censorship bar. So we were like, fuck this. Or can I swear on this channel? I swear on my channel.
I think it's a bit like the horses bolted there, yeah.
So anyway, so we were like, fuck this. This is so dumb. And let's just make the ad we want and put it on YouTube. And that's what we did.
How's the response been to that so far? You must have, I mean, especially with the way things are going and maybe with the demographics you're targeting anyway, fewer and fewer people are watching TV for as much time as they used to, and more people are spending more and more time online. So how's the response been so far? Has it been shared far and wide?
Yeah, I don't have the latest figures, but I think we're at tens of thousands of views right now. So we're super happy with the launch of it. And I've had friends that I haven't talked to in 5 years get in touch and say how much they love the ads. It's been really nice. It's been a really nice response. We didn't just make the ad just to kind of pat ourselves on the back. Like, the message of the ad is really what we believe in. So my main hope for the ad is that message comes through and people resonate with it.
Yeah, obviously a big part of the ad is that you don't rely on casino for your revenue, and that you want to make a proper sports betting product first and foremost. Doing this, speaking to other people in the industry, we kind of hear time and time again that casino is where the money is. It's due to the margins, and sports betting is just an entry point for that cross sell for a lot of operators. But you obviously don't ascribe to that vision. Have you ever considered launching a casino or iGaming product, or has that never been on the cards? No.
Nope.
Great.
The reason is, I mean, it's not that I think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, personally, I think it's a little bit lame because, I don't mind casino. I like going to Vegas, and I grew up next to Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. I like playing blackjack and things like that. I don't think casino's lame. Yeah. But I think doing it online is pretty lame. It's, there's also nothing to really innovate on. To me, I think the fun part of casino is it's having a drink and having some chat at the table and having that kind of that social experience of the casino, which you can't do at all online. So it's just never been exciting to me. And I also founded this business from a financial technology angle, and that's what I've been really passionate about. And there's nothing financial technology about casinos. So that's the other reason why we've never gotten to that industry.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's a business built in your vision, and you were also the star of the advert, wearing a number of perhaps questionable outfits.
Nothing. What was questionable about my outfit?
The cricket one was my favorite, I think, with a handlebar mustache. But how did you find filming that? It looked like you had a blast. Have you ever done anything before? Or?
It was funny, but what shocked me was how long it takes to make 80-second ad. So we were on set for 24 hours for an 80-second ad, which gives you a sense on like how long things take to set up. Like the crew, there's like 50 crew, 30 actors. So, watching things on telly, it just looks simple, and you just sort of switch swivel the camera around when the other person's talking. But like so much technical stuff goes into it that really surprised me. But other than that, it like I absolutely had a blast filming it. It was really fun.
Yeah, great. I think that comes through. And while we've got you on, Jason, away from the ad slightly, we broke some news this morning that Flutter has made some redundancies across its UK and Ireland division, and they said that was due to the challenging external environment. I think that's obviously related to the Gambling Act review and tightening restrictions in the UK. You're still obviously, alive and kicking in that market, with both the exchange and the sportsbook, which are on the odds checker grid. I'm just wondering how you've managed to make it a success of things in that market, and maybe how things have changed due to regulation from kind of 2020 to 2022, where we are now.
Well, in terms of regulation, it's no secret that the UKGC is really taking a stronger stance on things. They're really increasing the pressure on operators, really around two different key areas. One is around responsible gambling, and the other is around money laundering. I think there's a lot of good faith ideas that are coming out of the Gambling Commission. Sometimes I get frustrated that they're pushing a lot of responsibility of financial policing to the operators, which I don't think is necessarily the right solution. So, for example, if somebody has 10,000 pounds of dirty money from, let's say they were a drug dealer and they have 10,000 pounds in their Lloyd's account, and they deposit 10,000 pounds from Lloyd's into Smarkets and try to bet with that, we're liable for that money being a proceed of crime.
Yeah.
And you can imagine just the amount of overhead that's involved in trying to decide if money is clean or not. And, we're not a bank. We don't have visibility in other people's financing. And that's something that the UKGC is really pushing operators to take responsibility for, which I think is not the right solution, even though it's a good faith effort to have clean money in the system. I think compliance is undoubtedly harder. I think that is affecting the industry, but I would imagine that and I don't have any inside information on Flutter and their layoffs, and it's the first I'm hearing of that story. But it's just the other big consideration is the macroeconomic environment has completely changed in the last 6 months, with inflation and interest rates changing and consumers having less disposable income, et cetera, et cetera. Like every company more or less is doing layoffs. So it's not at all surprising. And I wouldn't just put all this on compliance, increasing the pressure. It's probably just an opportunity for a big company like Flutter to try to trim the sales.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've seen a lot of that, and we've also seen, like you rightly pointed out, many operators fall foul of those kind of increased AML guidelines that the commission has put in place. I guess one outcome of the review is likely to be like these obviously stake reductions on online casino, which you're protected from anyway. As we've discussed, you don't have any gaming products, so that's an upside. But one other thing that looks set to kind of potentially be banned in the future is shirt sponsorship. I remember many years ago now, you signed a deal with QPR, I think it was, back when they were probably in the Premier League or the Championship. Yeah. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that sponsorship situation and kind of whether you learned any from that specific activation that you did.
It was super fun. I mean, QPR was a great club, and I personally, I had a blast. I don't know necessarily how much it helped our business. Some of that I think was totally due to us not spending enough money in activation, things like that. I don't think I don't think that shirt sponsorship is a big deal either way. I think it's an easy thing for the government to do, and I don't think that companies are going to suffer that much from it. So I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't feel that strongly about it. I wish that the gambling commission did more about a lot of Asian bookmakers on front of jersey. I think that's bad for the local market, because if you're able to monetize an illegal market and use that money in the UK, it puts people that follow the rules at a disadvantage. So it would be nice to see the UKGC kind of follow, like, I don't think that these people should be allowed to put, DAFA bet, for example. Like, I don't think that they should be allowed to advertise into the UK market. But in the general sense, I don't think it's a big deal that they're going to get rid of shirt sponsorships. Now, in terms of the stake limiting, again, I think it's a good faith effort. So I'm not that mad, because I think everybody's just trying to have a quote unquote clean industry. What I would like to see more innovation around is more about transparency and edge. So I'm kind of like, to me, I think gambling at its core is a math equation. There's nothing amoral about a math equation. What happens that makes gambling kind of amoral, or with the tint of a sin, if you like, is the pricing, in my opinion. And I wish that when you went to an FOBT or you're placing a sports bet, the operators were required to publish their house edge, rather than having a necessarily restriction on your betting activity. It's more educate the consumer on how much they're paying for that transaction. So, like, I think something that's analogous is sort of like when you go to fast food, rather than saying like you can only have 20 grams of mayo on your Big Mac, they have to publish the amount of calories that's in the Big Mac. I think that's a better way to try to find the balance between consumer protection and consumer liberty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's a big part of why you went with an exchange model in the first place.
I went with the exchange model because, to me, that's the part I love about this industry. Like, the fact that you can trade events is, to me, it's phenomenal. I kind of came at this industry I was more into the political trading than the sports trading, but how cool is it that you can trade a sporting event like while you're watching it? I think that's amazing. And I don't understand why anybody would why you would build a bookmaking business model. I think everything should be going towards an exchange model.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating, Jason. Thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, SBK is also live in Colorado in the US. Is there anything else we should be looking out for from Smarkets or SBK before the end of this year?
We got our heads down. I mean, there's a lot of product improvements we got our heads down making. Like, one of the biggest weaknesses that we have is we don't have enough markets and events. So we're hard at work internally trying to get to parity with sort of the tier one operators. So we already have the best odds in the world for like the big events and the big markets. If your Premier League match odds, you would be hard pressed to find anybody that would have a better price than us ever on those markets. But as you go down the smaller markets, we're weaker on that. So that's the big thing we're working on delivering to consumers, and also more betting types, like a Lucky 15 and Yankees and things like that. Like, those are things that we need to add to the platform as well.
Great. And more TV ads as well, hopefully.
If they'll let me talk about the industry without censoring the commercial, maybe.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Jason. Great to speak to you as always.
Cool. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jason.
That was interesting.
Yeah,
great to have Jason on.
About.
Definitely, yeah. And we should also say a quick hello to all of our listeners today as well. Thank you, and viewers. Thank you very much for joining us. To Nico and also to Lars, who says hello from Sweden. Nice to see we are keeping it international iGaming next. So what else do we have on the agenda today, Connor? I think we're going to talk next about daily fantasy sports startup Underdog.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a good idea, actually. Big week for them.
Yeah, pretty major week for them. They've pulled off a $35 million funding round. they're a startup that started in 2020, so they've only February, I think. So they've only been going just over 2 years now, but they've made a pretty serious impact in the space already. And what's interesting about this latest funding round is that they vowed to basically put the funds into entering the real money licensed sports betting arena in the UK. So moving away from that sort of, not away from, but certainly adding on to that daily fantasy model, some actual licensed sports betting products as well.
In the US, not the UK.
In the US, yeah. So Conor, you wrote this story, if I remember correctly.
No, you wrote it.
I wrote this one. I wrote this one. See, I do still write stories every now and again.
No, you're so productive. You can't even keep track of everything that you're coming up with. Can't keep track.
But yeah, are there any kind of key standouts in this story from your point of view that you think are worth highlighting?
Well, I just think it's such an interesting one. It's one of those brands that's in my thinking, I'm not saying in terms of the business itself, but in my perception, it's one of those brands that looks like something like Fanatics or DAZN, where it's got so much money behind it, or even, Disney. People keep talking about Disney and how they might come in and disrupt the industry. I mean, this valuation, the money raised, and the most interesting thing for me is the people who are actually backing this. It's quite an amazing group, to be honest, from the business world, the gaming world, and even sort of the celebrity world. There's a massive list of people who are involved with this business, and it does seem to me that yes, there's an obvious early mover advantage in the US. Yes, some of these investments that operators are making into customer acquisition over the last few years will pay off. But actually, firms like those that I've just mentioned are kind of making me look at the market a little bit differently, which is looking at it in a way of like, well, who are the people that are waiting on the sidelines? What are they going to do when they get in? Once they've kind of, and I think a few operators have said this as well about the marketing spend, we're going to let this die down now because the amount that's being spent is just so crazy. And of course, Underdog have got a tried and tested customer acquisition method, which is through daily fantasy sports, which is obviously how FanDuel and DraftKings started off. So massive opportunity. But just looking at some of these investors, I mean, the latest round came from BlackRock, which speaks for itself, and Akia's investment. And I believe I'm pronouncing that right, Jake. I found out in New York it's Akia's. It's not AC's or RC's, certainly not.
Yeah. Hang on. So Grove will drink us for that one.
Yeah, but they're just, these guys are so switched on in terms of the US betting industry. I think they're going to, be way beyond what the money's offering. If they're getting advice from the guys at Akia's, then
but they've got a bunch of influencers on board as well, haven't they? And celebrity backers, I think.
Yeah, they've got Mark. I've got a list here. Mark Cuban out of that really flash American version of Dragon's Den. Kevin Durant, does he play sports?
He does basketball, yeah.
Odell Beckham Jr. Is that one of the Beckhams?
No, not to see you've got your finger on the pulse, Conor. That's NFL superstar.
No, you see, I've never watched any American sports because I haven't got the patience. But you've got Brian Corcoran, who's the ex-CEO of Paddy Power Betfair. We've got Eilers and Krychek, other big names in the gaming industry. Mark Pink,
Steve Aoki,
founder of Zynga. And Nas, who of Illmatic fame, who did that. He did another album actually with Damian Marley, Distant Relatives. Great album. But he's quite a big investor as well. I think he's, ever since he was quite young, probably in his 20s when he started gaining success, he's been investing in all sorts of businesses.
I think it'd probably be easier to list who's not investing at this point, to be honest.
Exactly, yeah.
But quite the opportunity. I think Jeremy Levine, the founder, would probably have a chuckle at you comparing them to Disney and the likes, as they're obviously just a startup in this space. But that's such as the impact they've made in such a short space of time. And Jeremy has history in this space as well. He presented as part of the Hot Six panel that we hosted in our New York event in May. And he's already founded a fantasy business once called Draft, and that was eventually sold to FanDuel. So he knows what he's doing. And I guess the most interesting thing of this story for me is that they're obviously going to enter online sports betting, and then the follow-up question to that is how are they going to do that? When I first read this story, I thought it might be through either like free-to-play functionality that operators can plug in, or via some kind of B2B acquisition channel. But listening back to that Hot Six panel, he was asked this question directly by some leading investors, and he said, no, we're absolutely going out as a B2C consumer brand, which I think is really interesting because, like you've said, think of the operators in that market already. How are you going to compete with those that have that first mover advantage, and also those kind of unlimited purse strings for marketing? He's made the point they're going to do that differently through product and customer experience, by the sounds of it, which, you know, is a buzzword and a lot of people say that. But like I said, he's got a history in this space before. And it sounds like they're going to attempt to do this via three separate pillars. One will be the core fantasy business as it stands now, daily fantasy business, which has three kind of patented games. Then there'll be a sportsbook launch in time, and then also kind of add-ons to improve that live betting experience, which I think they fit into that category pretty well. But it was interesting. He said he sees the company as a game studio in a licensed betting environment, rather than as a sportsbook company like a DraftKings, for example. So a slightly different approach, and it'll be really interesting to see how they get on. But if they're going to make a success of it, they've certainly got the right people behind them, I would suggest.
That's it. And I think, you know, everybody loves a David and Goliath story. And what did they say something about customer acquisition costs when they're releasing this? The news about the funding round, because I think, if I remember rightly, one of the businesses that has some of the lowest acquisition costs in US sports betting is Penn National Gaming through its Barstool Sportsbook, because that's got such a massive following on social media. And if you can do that and create that kind of engagement with people, then you don't have to have billions of dollars to throw away on Super Bowl ads.
Yeah, exactly. Smart, low cost acquisition with a kind of already engaged sports mad database, really.
Yeah,
and yeah, the quote you're talking about comes from Chris Grove. He said, while the typical sportsbook is spending over $500 to acquire a customer, Underdog is bringing in the new users for a fraction of that. So that will be the business model they kind of lean into going forward, I would imagine. But you know, for any company of this size, it's also about getting the right people in place. And they've hired Stacey Stern, who is the former FanDuel Government Affairs Director. She's going to help them do that. And she's also the chair of the US Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association. And it's interesting because Jeremy said that the way they're going to make an impact is by launching these new games and these betting products, but they're going to be products that regulators won't have ever seen before. So there's going to be a conversation there and an education issue with regulators about how they kind of, you know, how they get that seal of approval. And I think Stacey is somebody who can potentially help them do that. But as with any startup, it's about getting the right people into the business early on. I'm sure Pierre would tell you that about hiring us too.
That's it. Yeah, the worst mistake he ever made. So, have you had any detail on what's going to be so new about these products that the regulators never going to have seen them before? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, I don't know. I think it's just going to be the fact that it's a crossover product from DFS into real money betting. It's probably going to be micro markets, things like that. It's not going to be a conventional sports book. So, yeah, it's going to be, like I said, an interesting one to follow. But he said they've got a 7 to 10 year time horizon on the whole project, And having already sold his previous company, Draft, to FanDuel, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this business kind of bought out by, a DraftKings or somebody like that much before that 10-year period is up. But it depends on whether Jeremy wants to sell or whether he wants to see it through to the long run, I'd imagine.
Well, one to watch out for sure.
Yes. All right, should we move on to our next topic on the agenda?
I think we should, yeah. What have we got?
So next up, we've got lottery.com, which
here we go.
Are at a slightly different stage in their development, it's fair to say. They've had a torrid couple of weeks where I think Pierre and Nico probably discussed this originally on last week's stream, but they overstated their cash balance by $30 million, which is obviously, horrendous. You can't do that when you're a publicly listed company because it's all going to come out in the wash. The chief revenue officer resigned. I think the CFO might have gone as well. And the latest development is that the chief executive, I think possibly the founder, Tony DiMatteo, has quit the business because, well, presumably his position was untenable.
Yes, he is going to stay on in an advisory capacity, as far as we know. But there's only a 10-day notice period for either side of that party to nakedhd.xyz. Oh, here we go. I think we've been hacked. We've got a bot watching us. Oh, yeah. I'm just going to put loads of emojis in the chat. Anyway, Tony DiMatteo. Yeah, he's staying on in an advisory capacity, but that could be terminated within 10 days at any time. So presumably, perhaps he'll be helping to put another leader in place, or perhaps he'll be, just helping the board to figure out what to do next. There's of course a question of whether they're going to want his help. I think it's not very often you see a whole executive team collapse like that within the space of a few weeks. I mean, how many was it? It was three. So three of the top people there: CFO, chief revenue officer, and CEO now.
C-levels, yeah.
All gone within a few weeks. And now, if you go on the lottery.com website, investor relations website, and look at their management team, there's only two executives listed. So you've got CFO Harry Dhaliwal and Chief Legal and Chief Operating Officer Katie Lever. So you've got two people in the executive team at the moment. So I think nobody really knows what's going to happen with it next, but it's been quite a fall from grace over the last sort of year, really, for lottery.com, or certainly for 2022 to date. Funnily enough, today the share price is up about 8%, but it's up 8% to 78 cents US. And I had somewhere some figures that, so that's up 8% today, but that's still down 33% in the past month, and it's down 87% year to date. So the share price started the year at $6.11. And now it's 78 cents. So not looking very good. And just to clarify as well, for the sake of context, I mean, you said they overstated their cash balance by 30 million. I mean, if it was the difference between like 1.18 billion and 1.21 billion, you can see how the numbers would get lost. But no, the market cap of this whole business is less than $40 million. So how they can...
not exactly an exchange down the back of the sofa, is it?
No, something has gone really seriously wrong there.
Yeah. And I think this is a company as well that, is kind of indicative of a wider issue within the public gambling space, where they kind of rode this crest of the wave with a SPAC listing at the right time. It's an easy way or certainly a fast-tracked way for companies to go public and get listed, with perhaps slightly less higher barriers to entry in terms of due diligence, and we've seen a lot of founders and kind of management teams get rich in the process, but then that hasn't necessarily transitioned into a well-managed public company. This is obviously a standout example of that, but there may be other gaming companies that have gone down the SPAC route that may live to regret it, and it may all come out in the wash. But yeah, the company's been kind of taken to task by Twitter users all week. One of them personally nominated the chief executive for the worst CEO of all time, and that kind of thing that you usually would see on social media. But Conor, you also had somebody reach out to you via email, I think, who seemed a bit more serious.
No, there was a lot of quite amusing commentary on Twitter. Somebody saying that now the executive team has been flushed down the toilet, we can start again. And perhaps they will. But yes, somebody, I believe a retail investor got in touch with me to tell me that they had been invested in the business for about a year and a half, and had lost more than $45,000 in the process. And somebody who was close to them lost a further $300,000. And I'm actually going to talk to them later today, because I think from that retail investor's perspective, they're quite keen to try and highlight that risk of the SPAC route. And I think, it's I won't pretend it's a process that I'm intimately familiar with, listing publicly via a SPAC merger, but it seems that each one of these SPAC listings is a gamble in some respect. And yeah, I suppose the lottery.com thing specifically it appears to be a result of quite catastrophic mismanagement, or that's what it looks like. Because thinking back a couple of years, you can understand the logic, especially if they've got the IP rights to this product that's going to take lottery tickets online. I mean, it's massive. It's huge potential. Something's obviously gone a little bit wrong.
Yeah,
we're down nearly
we've seen
this year.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a kind of SPAC frenzy a year and a half ago, wasn't it, or 2 years ago? Everyone was at it, but it's dried up a little bit since then. I think with BetClick being the outlier who recently went public via a kind of three-way SPAC combination, but that was with a much bigger media conglomerate. But yeah, perhaps we'll have to invite an investment expert or an analyst on next week to explain why SPACs are no longer flavour of the month.
Yeah, I'm just looking now, just out of curiosity, because one that stuck in my mind was Supergroup, the Betway owner. That went public at $10 a share, I think. It looks like something like $8, but that's down 52% all time. It's currently trading under $4. But at the time, I remember thinking, sort of reading the financials and reading all about this listing, and I do remember thinking, no, $10 a share, that's not too bad. That sounds like a buy to me. And now it's $4, so it shows you what I know.
Yeah, you dodged a bullet there.
But yeah, they do seem to. There's something sort of. I think that the flirtation with the SPAC period is probably over in a sense. Maybe not. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've got about 15 minutes left on our stream.
Should we see what other cruel things people have said about Tony Dimatteo online, or should we leave him alone now?
No,
I
think he's had a tough enough week.
And he's a break. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, moving on to the last story on the agenda, and this again kind of puts the sponsorship debate under the microscope a little bit in the UK. So Fulham have teamed up with W88, which is one of those kind of Asian gambling operators that Jason was talking about at the top of the pod, who kind of are massive in Asia and unregulated territories that way, and then they kind of can circumvent the UK market slightly on a white label license model via a third party, and then that enables them to kind of put their logo on Premier League club shirts, and that gives them amazing global exposure as the most watched league in the world. Also, obviously, the Premier League is absolutely huge in Asia. A lot of clubs did their pre-season tours across Asia in the last couple of weeks. I think Tottenham were in Korea, and a few other clubs went to Australia and Asia at the same time. The appetite for it there is just absolutely crazy. But we're still seeing kind of really significant backlashes from every fan base, it seems, that seems to strike a deal with a gambling company. I don't think that tide of opinion is going to change anytime soon. We've seen a couple of clubs, Norwich City, for example, say we're not going to work with gambling operators anymore on a voluntary basis. And even those clubs that are, like Brentford, for example, who has teamed up with Hollywood Bets for the last couple of years, and they're still on the shirts this season. The Brentford Supporters Association did a poll on Twitter this week where 70% of fans basically said that they would vote to stop having commercial partnerships with gambling companies. And I think, this is a big part of why the league, or certainly the clubs within the league, have taken it upon themselves to potentially do something about this. Because even if the government doesn't come in and say gambling sponsorships banned, it's in black and white, you're not allowed to partner with them. You don't want to alienate your fan base, and you want to roll along with fan sentiment, really, as they're the one that pay the gate receipts, buy the shirts, everything else. So, yeah, I think we're going to see fewer and fewer of these deals happen as the seasons roll on. I don't know what you think, Conor.
Yeah, I don't know. What was the other one we had recently? It wasn't Everton. Was it? Everton
was stake.com, yeah.
Yeah. I get this feeling that there are certain people in the business, in the industry, so that is to say, who want to zig when everybody else zags. And so they think, well, they're coming for football sponsorships. Probably 80-90% of these firms are going to drop them over the next few years. We're going to double down now, and let's be the only brand out there on Premier League shirts. And I can understand the logic of that. And Fulham, I mean, I used to live just literally around the corner from Craven Cottage where Fulham lived, and they look like they need the money, to be fair. So
it's a lovely little ground, Craven Cottage.
I never went inside it, but it looked like it could do with a bit of TLC from the outside anyway.
It's old school. That's what it's all about, down by the River Thames.
It's lovely down there, yeah. But there's obviously going to be such a balancing act for football club, isn't it? Such a balancing act to keep the money coming in and keep the fans happy. I think for me, the place where I really have a lot of sympathy with the anti-gambling, anti-sponsorship lobby is when you come to consider the fact that sort of how many little kids are watching football all the time. That's the question for me. I don't think. Well, no, I know for a fact there's no other type of content out there that has the same appeal to children as professional sports often do, that you would be legally allowed to advertise gambling around. There's absolutely no way. Just because it's something which appeals to children and adults alike.
Yeah,
I think the advertising code states that it mustn't appeal specifically in a targeted way to children, but that there was a change in the wording of that as well, which is separate from the sponsorship issue anyway. But that's where I do think, you know what, advertise somewhere else. I think I totally get why the fans get frustrated with it. Even for adults, it's too much. So, you know, to think that it's really acceptable actually for us to put this much gambling imagery in front of children, you know, it seems a bit odd to me. And obviously all sports betting advertisers. I mean, would the response be even more negative if they were really pushing casino hard or pushing poker hard? So that's my 2 cents on it. To be honest with you, mate, I'm not really into it. I think the shirt sponsorships. I think if it's consigned to the history bin, the clubs will make money somewhere else.
And we've seen this with alcohol before. You know, Holston used to sponsor Tottenham, and Chang, I think, used to sponsor Everton, and those sponsorships were eventually banned for the same reasons.
Well, the tobacco firms used to sponsor the snooters, used to sponsor everything, didn't they?
Yeah, so, the F1 and all those kind of sports.
Yeah, it's like play snooker and drink bitter and smoke cigarettes and you'll be okay. It's like you can't really do that. It's not responsible. But people didn't know any better, but now we do. And I don't, you know, the age-old debate that goes down is the industry says, oh, no, advertising doesn't have that much of an impact on how much people gamble. And then everybody else says, well, why are you spending millions and millions of pounds on it then? Obviously, you're lying. But it's obviously brand awareness. It's a complex question. But my thought on it is, try and put your logo where there's more exclusively adults and less likely to be advertising to the little ones.
And I think you make a good point with the snooker, for example. Those types of sports, darts, snooker, are obviously a lot more reliant on betting revenue than, say, top flight Premier League football is. You know, people are going to watch Premier League football regardless. They're going to pick up commercial partners elsewhere. But there's other sports like snooker and obviously horse racing, which is synonymous with betting, where you couldn't just go in there and say, right, that's it, betting sponsorships are banned, because then you're genuinely putting the future of those sports at risk. There's no such risk in the Premier League, obviously. And I think 8 clubs at the moment are going into the new season with gambling sponsorships. Most of them are kind of Asian-facing bookmakers. There's also Betway in there, who sponsored West Ham for a long time now, and Hollywood Bets, as we discussed with Brentford, who are from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a million more other kind of official partnerships, global partnerships, regional partnerships, kind of sleeve sponsors, training kit sponsors, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. The concern comes from especially selling replica shirts. If you're selling like junior replica shirts and you've got somebody, you know, some 11-year-old walking around with an Asian bookmaker on their chest, then there's kind of a worry there. But I think to be fair, most clubs have stamped that out already.
What, off the junior replica shirts specifically?
And off the under 18 team shirts and that kind of thing. That was common sense. But yeah, whether voluntarily or whether government enforced, I think we're going to continue to see this be stamped out. And the Premier League clubs are obviously due to meet in the next few days, I think, or certainly by September. I can't recall the exact date, but then we'll have more kind of concrete info on this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What is it they're going to take a vote on a voluntary ban?
On a voluntary front of shirt ban. They need 14 to clear it. And if you think 8 are already sponsored by gambling companies, that leaves 12 that aren't. You're basically asking at least 2 clubs that are sponsored by gambling companies to vote against it.
You're asking 2 turkeys to vote for Christmas.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, those are our thoughts on the situation at the moment. This will obviously develop, as will the whole UK regulatory situation when the review comes out. But I think we're just about getting to that hour mark now, so it's probably time for us to knock it on the head, Conor.
We need hang on. We need a new Prime Minister before we can have a gambling act review, Jake. Who's your money on?
True.
Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the forum for me to give my views on those 2 individuals.
Oh dear. Well, we're in safe hands either way.
Yeah, but worth checking that, you know, the Smarkets exchange, the Ladbrokes exchange, all the politics betting sites to see who's favourite at the moment between Rishi Sunak and Liz
No,
Truss. But
I know inexplicably, I think Liz Truss is favourite. Penny
I
Mordaunt was
guess,
favourite for a minute, and nobody's ever heard of her. So stranger things have happened. But that's
Well, anyway, we're going down the rabbit hole now. We'll knock it on the head before
we'll keep an eye out. We'll keep all the viewers updated as that situation develops.
So I mean, Pierre usually signs off by saying he'll go for a pina colada, but I think you actually are going for a pina colada, right, Conor? Some kind of team building iGaming next exercise in London.
I think the bar's called The Alchemist, which sounds quite exciting. So, what does that mean? They'll be turning lead into gold. Also, the name of an excellent novel, which I think you'd really enjoy if you haven't read it, Jake. But yes,
drawing a line under that. Before we go, we'll say thank you again to our key sponsors in Playson and Zimpler, who play those awesome intro vids before we come online every week. But otherwise, yeah, I'm sure Pierre and Nico will be back with you next week. Thanks as always for tuning in. And if you need us for anything, email news@igamingnext.com. Otherwise, have a great rest of the week.
Thanks for having me, Jake. See you later, everybody.